and welcome to the Happy Horse Nutrition Podcast. We have our special guest Orla back with us today to do some more Q&A sessions. So big warm welcome back to you, Orla.
Oh, hello.
Oh, it's so good to have you back. It was so much fun doing the first two sessions with you, and I'm really, really grateful that you've agreed to come back and ask me some more questions. And it's just so lovely to be able to share some of our shared experiences on horse farms and different places that we've been together over the years, and various weird and wonderful, nutrition situations that we've come across. It's really nice to be able to dig them back out and put them to good use in hopefully helping other people with their horse problems.
Yeah, my notes app, I'll be like riding through the forest. I'm like, oh, remember that time? And I'm like trying to write it down.
I know, lucky for quiet horses, hey? I was messaging our amazing Matt, who's done a vast majority of the development work on the My Happy Horse app. And I often use Orla, who is my daughter's off-the-track thoroughbred, for example diet. So he's constantly seeing screenshots with Orla. And I was on one of my little paints, and Tamaya was in front of me on Orla, and I went, oh, I should take a video of Orla and send it to Matt. So here I am with on my 4-year-old paint, who's dead quiet, but like split reins, just resting across her neck and no hands, riding along, videoing and then messaging Matt. And I was like, oh, I just love when horses are that quiet that you can do that sort of stuff.
Yeah, very rare things I find.
Well, yeah, I guess a lot of it comes down to how they're fed, behaviour.
Yeah.
But anyway, we won't dig into that,
We'll get into
otherwise
that.
we'll get started. Yeah, you might have a question for me on that one. All right, let's dig in.
Oh, well, God, I went down a rabbit hole and I was re-listening to some of the episodes. Loved the one with Brian, and I cannot think of his...
Renee Harbowie.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, I would like you to release episode 2, please.
It comes out today, as a matter of fact. Yes, yeah. So Orla's talking about the podcast episode with Brian Nielsen and his grad student Renee, and we talk about their recent research into joint supplements and whether they actually have an effect. I could do a massive spoiler and tell you the answer, but they really are episodes worth listening to.
No, I really liked it. And they covered so much. But one thing that you brought up, and then I went down another rabbit hole on Facebook looking at nutrition forums.
Mm-hmm.
And fecal water syndrome came up a lot. And you sorry, I'm skipping. You actually touched on that with the microbiome.
With Belinda, yes. Yep.
My God, my brain.
This is why Orla and I get along. Our brains like skip around together.
Ding, 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 ding. You brought up fecal water syndrome, and I know I've dealt with a lot of people who have it, but I still find there's just so much what about it. So maybe you can touch on that a little bit.
Yeah, when you say you dealt with a lot of people that have it, you've dealt with a lot of people.
Yeah. Horses.
Dealt with a lot of people that have horses that have it. It's an interesting one, and to be perfectly honest, I don't know. Like, I couldn't sit here and say, well, this is what causes it, which is, I think, is a big part of the problem, is we don't actually know what causes it. And now I'm trying to search through my brain on the most recent information I've caught up on it. I mean, the thing that sticks out to me the most with it is that one of the treatments that seems to work, at least for a little while, is the fecal transplant. So you go and get fecal matter from a healthy horse. It's a veterinary procedure just because you have to use a nasogastric tube, but you get manure from a very healthy horse that is on a forage-based diet, preferably. You don't want one that's on a grain-based diet, and you mix it into a slurry in warm water very carefully, because you don't want to expose all the poor little bacteria to oxygen, because oxygen actually kills them. The good bacteria that live in the hindgut don't like oxygen. And then that gets via nasogastric tube put down into the horse's stomach, washed through the small intestine, where hopefully not too many of them get actually digested, and then some of them will end up in the hindgut. And what seems to be the pattern is that it will help most horses, at least for a little while. Some horses maybe longer term, but then a lot of the horses will revert back to having the free fecal water. So to me, that's saying that I don't know. It's a complex area because what I've realised, and it's only been in the last 12 months. I had to go to Japan around this time last year for work, and one of the things that the farms over there wanted me to talk about. So we do lots of farm visits when I go over there, but then we usually have a whole day, like essentially in a classroom, and I present to all the different groups. So the broodmare managers and the yearling managers and all that sort of stuff. And one of the things that they were really interested in last year was the microbiome of broodmares. So I started doing a lot of digging and found the thing that I'm sure I've already mentioned it on some other podcast, but where the foal actually gets programmed by its mother in utero, so nothing to do with the birth process and actually being inoculated with microbes as it's coming out the birth canal, but the dam actually essentially says to the foal, this microbe is good, this one's not, this one's good, this one's not, so that the foal's body is pre-programmed to know which ones it should allow to stay and which ones it should try to get rid of. So when it might have been with Belinda, we were talking, so in the hindgut microbe episode with Dr. Belinda Chapman. So what I think happens with these horses, that they'll improve for a little while but then revert back to free fecal water, is maybe their programming's not quite right. So if we put a healthy microbiome in via fecal transplants, a little while that those microbes will exist in there and you'll see an improvement. But then after a while, if that horse's programming from its mother goes, actually those ones that are actually good are bad because that's what its programming says. Like if it doesn't recognize them, then its body's going to go, no, those ones need to get out. It will revert its microbiome back to what it originally had.
Well, so, okay. And then with that, you're saying put in the manure of a healthy horse. Is this something that we should be testing? Like doing the test to see if that's where my brain was like, oh, here we go.
Yeah. Well, and this is the problem in humans too. And I can't remember. It's funny, we have been recording a lot of podcasts, and I can't remember whether it was actually on a podcast I was talking about this or whether it was just in a conversation with someone. But it was Bridie, who you and I both worked with on Thoroughbred Farms for a long time. She and I she listened to the podcast episode with Dr. Belinda, and she just sends me I didn't know she was listening to it, obviously, and she just sends me this text message going, microbiome at 28 days affects performance at 2 or 3 years, whatever the years thing is. And she's like, blew my mind. And I said, I know, it's crazy, isn't it, that it has such a massive impact on our horses. And I'd explained this to her then, how, the foal actually gets programmed by its mother, and then you can't change that programming, it seems, later in life. So then she, about a week later, she sends me this article that was an ABC, Australian Broadcasting Corporation, for anyone who's not familiar with ABC, as Aussies would be. It was an ABC article about a woman who, as a teenager, I had normal mental health, but she ended up on antibiotics for about 2 years with, I think it was glandular fever and chickenpox or something like that, some combination of two diseases, and she'd ended up on antibiotics for an insanely long amount of time, and then ended up with severe mental health issues.
Wow.
Really severe. And she'd lived like that for years, and then she met a guy who was a scientist, and they fell in love, and he was like, this is not living the way that she was. She was up and down. I think it might have been bipolar that she was officially diagnosed with. Anyway, and this is where, when you're saying you're testing, do we need to test the manure so that you know what a healthy horse is, and you're not actually introducing other problems into a horse when you do these fecal transplants. They did a DIY.
No.
I know. Yeah. It's but in their case, and they do say in this article, please don't do it. It was crazy. They didn't understand the risks of what they were doing, I think, to a large degree, and they're like, don't do it yourself. But incredibly, in her situation, she got better. It was amazing. And her psychologists and psychiatrists and everyone were like, holy moly, this is massive. And it was such a cool example of how much your microbiome can affect behavior.
Yeah.
and mental
Yeah.
health, which, is true for us, is true for our horses, certainly. So Bridie's question was, well, if you can't change the microbiome, then how come it worked for her? And I went, so the difference here is she must have had a normal microbiome, like a good, healthy microbiome.
Right, yeah.
And then antibiotics have completely wiped it out. And then when it's been reintroduced, the body's essentially gone, oh my God, I'm so glad to see you back.
Yeah.
And it's kept that healthy microbiome that amazingly her partner was able to give her without giving her any other problems. Because you're right, like there's so many diseases and things that can go wrong if you use the wrong donor. I don't know that we've really gotten to that point with horses where we go, you really should test, but it's definitely valid. And certainly the, Belinda's lab and the EquiGI service that they have where you can test, so they can look for pathogenic bacteria. It's one of the, they've been doing that for a long time in many different mediums. So, they do a lot of food testing and all that sort of stuff to look for nasty microbes. So definitely they could look at that. And they could also look at, does this horse actually have a healthy microbiome? To a large extent, you can probably tell that a horse has a healthy microbiome from its behavior. Like you have to take lots and lots of things into account. Like, does it maintain weight normally without being overweight or underweight all the time? Is its behavior normal? All that sort of stuff. But yes, definitely gold standard would be test a horse. Vet clinics could test some specific horses and know that, that this horse, the microbiome is going to change seasonally and it changes every time your feed changes and all that sort of stuff. But they could have donor horses that they know have a healthy microbiome that they could then use for fecal transplant. But the thing is, if the horse that they're transplanting into doesn't have the programming for a healthy microbiome,
you're never going to have it.
It's not going to stick. And the other thing too, I think with fecal water, so there's a gorgeous vet over in the US, Dr. Jen, who she and I have been emailing backwards and forwards a little bit in the last few months about a horse with free fecal water over there. And the thing that stands out to me with that horse is it's on one type of hay.
Right.
So, and I can't remember whether it was Timothy or it was one of the more common, I think it was Timothy, I'd have to go and check, but it was one type of hay. And when you're feeding such a limited diet, there's no fibre diversity in that diet. And then you're not going to be able to support any level of microbiome diversity. So I think that's possibly plays a role as well. So for a horse with free fecal water now, outside of yes, I think fecal transplant is worth a go. I really do with the horses. And if you can get microbes to stick and they make a long-term difference, and that's great. Certainly reducing stress. Like, it's really interesting. The paint horses are more prone, and they do seem to be bottom of the pecking order. Like, I have one coloured paint here who Domino, and she was, so I ended up with her and her sister as yearlings, and she was definitely the most dominant of the two of them, like by a long way. Dellinger was really, she was quite weedy. She was very, very undernourished and in a really bad state. So she was, Domino just bossed her around. And then after they got broken in, and I don't know whether it was because Domino was put with another horse that was really dominant over her, and she came home quite sick too. There was lots of viruses around and she was just unwell and she was tired from being like, I felt so sad when I got her home. And she's now bottom of the pecking order, and that's where she's going to stay. So I don't know. It's funny, like whether because of their colour. I don't know what it is. And some behaviouralists will know. But yeah, they're more prone to free fecal water, and it appears to be a stress thing maybe. So definitely reducing stress. But I also think a massive benefit in trying to get as much fibre diversity into these horses' diets as possible. So, if you've got a horse with free fecal water and it's only on one type of hay, or even on two types, if it's getting grassy hay and then some lucerne hay, try to expand that out to as many different types of hay as you can.
Yeah, okay.
If they're on pasture, like, try to get as many different plant species into your pasture as you can. So if anyone's planting pasture, don't go for 1, 2 or 3 species pastures. Like, get as much diversity into those pastures as you can, so the horses have got as much fibre diversity as possible, because we've gone and taken these creatures who roamed wild for many millions of years, and in the blink of an evolutionary eye, have reduced their diet so far down to just a few plant species, and that definitely has an impact on their microbiome. And it's one of those things I don't think we just don't understand enough to say whether that is contributing to free fecal water or not. But I mean, every horse should be on as much fibre diversity as possible. So even more motivation if your horse has got free fecal water symptoms to try and increase the fibre diversity as much as possible. And then to combine that with the fecal transplant, if you do a fecal transplant and then you're feeding all of those new microbes a diverse species of fibre, you're more likely to, I mean, as long as the horse's body's not booting them out,
Yeah.
if it reverts back to what they were, simply because you're not providing the diversity of fibre to maintain those new microbes, having a more diverse diet just might be enough to maintain the benefits of the fecal transplant longer term.
And then
Maybe.
with that, is there any space then for like gut supplements to help with that? Like introducing more of a range of like species in there, or just supporting that transplant or transplant? Yeah, is there a space for them to actually help?
Yeah, there is. I mean, there's lots of different gut supplements on the market. Some of them are amazing, some of them not so much. But there's, I mean, I definitely think that not bacterial probiotics. So a lot of the bacterial probiotics, and in fact, nearly, I'd say 90+% of them will be lactic acid producing bacteria. And they're the bacteria that they're normal in a hindgut and they will have a role, but they should be less than 1% of the population.
Right.
Like we don't want to introduce them in there because they're not the species that we want to build up. So gut supplements based on those types of probiotic bacteria, I don't think have a role to play. Gut supplements that have the yeast, some live yeast probiotic, there's a little bit of research to support their use, but my preference is to use the what they now call, at least Diamond V do, they call them postbiotics. There's lots of different versions of this, lots of different companies make them, but essentially they take yeast and there'll be specific strains of yeast, and you would get different things depending on what yeast you start with. But they get yeast and they get a food source and they feed the yeast, essentially. They let them do their thing and do their fermentation and produce all of their funky little metabolites that they produce and all that sort of stuff. And then they shut that fermentation system down and they dry off what they've created, and then that's what you feed to your horse. So you're essentially giving them, I still call it a prebiotic, like it's still, food for bacteria. They call it postbiotic because it's post already the fermentation process. I do think that they've got a role to play. I mean, you're just introducing variety into the diet, essentially. So you're able to help support different microbes and support that diversity. But with any supplement, if your foundational diet is not right, so if you don't have fibre diversity or if you don't have enough forage in the diet, so if you're feeding 1% or less forage, or even 1.5% or less forage a day to a horse, and then you're using a gut supplement to try and fix their gut health, it's not going to work. It's just not going to work, because it's like you've got a bushfire on your hands and then you come along with a supplement that's like a garden hose and you're trying to put the fire out with a garden hose. It's just not going to work. So the nutrition as the basis of fixing any nutrition-based problem for a horse is so important to have the foundational diet. So have enough forage and have a variety of forage are your two biggest. If you get that right with a horse, you're so far towards having a really, really healthy horse.
Perfect. And now this is a real off topic, but it's just a story I remember, and it came up when I was on my rabbit hole down this nutrition page, which I completely forgot. And the second I saw it, I was like, oh yes, palominos. I remember talking to you about trying to create a diet for a palomino to prevent smutting. And yeah, I just remember you blew my mind with basically how the only way that you could do it was. I don't know if you're going to remember that. Do you?
Yeah,
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 perfect.
yeah. Well, I don't. Yeah, I remember. I mean, I've had this conversation. I've had this conversation a lot of times over the years with people. So yes, if anyone who owns a palomino, and particularly a show palomino, you'll know exactly what we're talking about. But some palominos have a gene that turns their mane and their tail dark, and it's actually, to me, it's a sign of them being really healthy. When you feed them in a way that you get what is called in the show scene smutting, it's just telling me that they're healthy. It's like feeding a black horse and they go black, or feeding a liver chestnut horse and they go that really, beautiful, rich liver chestnut color. To me, it's the same thing. You're bringing out the natural color in these horses, but it's not the show palomino standard is that they have a white tail and a white mane, so they have to feed to prevent smutting, and it's the same. I mean, if you want to darken any horse's coat, you meet their mineral requirements, and particularly copper and zinc. For people that, and I don't like the way it's done, but essentially you make these horses copper and zinc deficient. You have to be careful how you do it because you don't want to make them so deficient. But it's probably a case of, you feed them to NRC copper and zinc requirements, which is the bare minimum of copper and zinc you need to prevent classic deficiency symptoms. But, I don't know, I think it's a tough one because when you feed them so little copper and zinc that you don't get any of the smutting, then you also risk affecting their hoof health, you risk affecting their gut health, you risk affecting their immune function, like this, and list goes on. But yeah, I don't know if you're allowed to bleach. I'd be just bleaching there.
Yeah, well, it's because I saw.
I don't know if you're allowed to do that.
Well, 'cause-
I don't know. I don't know much about the show, and definitely not about the palomino show scene. But yeah, it's not. I don't know the rules, so don't listen
They
to me
dye
on
every
that
other horse, so I'm sure that they bleach a palomino. But yeah, I just know I saw this beautiful palomino, and she had a really nice diet, and I was like, oh look, you just are a natural. You don't have the smut gene. And then I just saw like the glaze of the, what are you talking about? I was like, ignore me. I'm writing down that note because it just came up so much. And like, oh, I'm feeding this palomino supplement, and I'm like, what's in what? What's in the supplement? Yeah.
I don't normally mention actual products on this podcast, but John Conkey has actually got a product called Palomino Gold, and he's developed that around trying to give these horses enough to keep them healthy without making them smart. So if someone is looking for, and it's the only, I mention it because it's the only product that I know of. There could well be other products, but it's the only one I know that's been specifically formulated for this purpose and by, someone who really does know what they're doing. So I would trust that it's going to do a good job.
Yeah, so it'll actually be meeting them, but it won't be like over. It will just be what they need. Yeah, cool.
What they need to prevent classic deficiency symptoms. So not necessarily what they need for optimum health, but what they need to prevent classic deficiency symptoms.
Yeah, that's cool. That's good. I'll make sure I send this episode to her because she was just like, I need answers. I was like, I just ignore everything I've said.
Yeah, it's definitely a genetic thing. And again, I'm not a geneticist by any stretch of the imagination, but it is from memory. There's a gene that if they've got it, they'll smut, and if they don't, then you can feed them normally. And if you can feed them normally, if they don't have that gene, then you get that like really gold coat as well. Yeah. And then they are beautiful animals. I've always loved palominos. Poet's dad was a beautiful palomino quarter horse.
You bred her.
And I got a chestnut.
Damn it.
I was hoping for a palomino, but I got a chestnut.
All right. And then I have a listener question. So I thought this would be something I'd try and add in. This person lives out near me. She's got a 14-year-old mare. It's just been weaned about 2 weeks ago. And the mare has typically put everything into her foal. So kind of dairy cow classic. Is getting fed, but just pumps everything to the foal. They were planning on rebreeding her, but they need to get her back to a healthy weight. And so she's asked for advice on that.
What breed is she?
She is a stock horse.
Okay, and the foal was weaned 2 weeks ago.
Yeah. And
they'd be looking to breed her between now and December.
Yeah, is the aim. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Are they on property? Do they have pasture?
Yes, she's on
Or
pasture. Yeah.
okay, lots of pasture.
Is now. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So that to me, pasture is always the best basis for weight gain diets because they've got access to high, I mean, particularly at this time of year, like our pastures and in the area where Orla is, we've had really good rainfall, and at this time of year, the pasture's really just starting to kick into gear. Like the days are getting longer and they're not quite getting warmer yet, but they're definitely more sunlight. So you're getting that higher level of photosynthesis so the plants can grow faster. So that's an excellent start that she's out on pasture. Did she have a friend out on pasture?
They've just brought her over to this property, so I'm gonna say that she will be with 2 geldings.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Because that's important too, because you'll find that horses are always happier off grazing for long periods of time when they've got friends to go and graze with. So she's calm and she's happy just having her head down and grazing, particularly after just weaning a foal. Like that's stressful. So she'll work her way through that. And yeah, having pasture buddies definitely helps. And then the next layer on that, so she's got lots and lots of, I'm going to assume, mostly grassy pasture, and then the next layer on top of that would be to bring in a high protein. So if she's put everything into her foal and used up a lot of her own muscle mass, they really need to put in a lot of protein, and I think one of the best ways to do that is feed loose and hay as well.
Mm-hmm.
At that size, and being a broodmare, like 2 to 4 kilos, or 4.4 to 8.8 pounds a day of lucerne or alfalfa, depending on what you call it, but getting that into the diet as well, and then some sort of really digestible feed, so higher energy feed each day as well, and you'd probably. I mean, if she's healthy, she should gain weight really fast. Like, and horses coming into spring, there's lots of hormonal drivers coming into spring that actually tell them, like, right, you've come through winter, you've likely, like, this is all evolutionary, so it's definitely not driven by domesticated horses. It's driven by the, 99.9% of their time on the earth, but prior to us being in their lives, is that, you've come out of a hard winter, it's spring, like you need to make hay while the sun shines and pack on as much weight as possible. So I don't think she'll need a lot of feed to put on weight. She shouldn't need a lot of feed. And the trap that you need to avoid is if they went and said, right, we've got this, a broodmare feed would be perfect for her because they're typically high in protein and they're high in energy. So using something that's designed for a broodmare will help her put on weight, and that's the direction I'd go. But if they try to push her too hard, too early, what they're going to do is push her, and if it's a grain-based feed, they'll just end up pushing a heap of grain and therefore a lot of starch into the hindgut, and that will feed the bad bacteria, and then they'll build up their populations like crazy fast and they'll wipe out the good bacteria. And then she gets down to this situation where she can't digest her pasture, she can't digest her hay, and then she's relying almost solely on what she's getting out of the feed, and that doesn't help at all. So, like, giving her time, and I guess not being in a rush, so that we bring things undone when we want to be in a rush. So if they're looking at it going, oh, we want to pack weight on her in the next month, and then they, gave her 4 or 5 kilos of hard feed a day, it's going to bring her hindgut undone. So it's better to give her free access to pasture, put the lucerne hay in there that brings in fibre variety as well. So you making sure that her hindgut's really, really healthy, and then no more than 2 kilos of hard feed for a horse her size. She's not a big, she'd be 450 kilos, somewhere around there.
Yeah.
So she's not a big horse. So, a kilo in the morning and a kilo at night, and using a feed that will meet her requirements at that level. I would recommend that they jump onto the My Happy Horse Nutrition app and balance her diet, because that is really important, especially after they've had a foal, like making sure that they do actually have all the nutrients they need to be healthy. So, a lot of feeds will meet a horse's requirements at 2 kilos when they're not actually doing anything, but it's just so good to check and make sure that you are actually meeting, and that you've got energy reasonably high in the diet for weight gain. Yeah, that's how I'd approach it. Just really rely heavily on the fibre, because honestly, when you get a horse doing well on a fibre-based diet, they just maintain their weight so easily, particularly when you've got pasture available.
Yeah, and I thought that was quite fitting when she sent that through, because I was like, well, everyone's going to be getting the horses. Well, they're foaling now, so everyone's getting ready for the season in Australia or this side of the world. I'm sure there's lots of stud farms going, why won't you put on weight?
Well, yeah, and lots of stud farms also going, why are you so heavy
fat?
in condition? So it's interesting, like with the having to put weight on mares. When the first time I went to Japan, which is in March 2020, so February 2020, and then I got home and the whole world shut down. A month later, I was like, oh wow, I'm so glad I came back when I did, but I missed all of my flights over there through no fault of my own. So I literally landed for the first time ever in Japan in the snow. So I'd come out of this crazy hot summer in Australia and landed in the snow thinking, oh, I'm going to die from cold here. And my client picked me up from the airport. I got like 15 minutes to have a shower, get changed. And then I'm on a farm and they start bringing horses out to me. I'm like, oh, wow. This is... And the horses that they were bringing out to me were mares that they couldn't keep weight on. So they were like lean and they're being like beautifully cared for, really well fed, but they just couldn't keep weight on these mares. Anyway, we over a process of years, we've worked through the diets and we've introduced more ingredient variety. We've introduced a lot more forage, relied less on grain. We've brought enzymes in, so the starch digesting enzymes that I think is so important in horse diets, because a lot of horses just can't digest starch very well because they don't have enough of the amylase enzyme. Like horses have got less amylase enzyme in some cases than cats.
Is cats coming up in this podcast again?
Yeah. Still haven't been licked by a cat. Was in the presence of a cat the other day, but man, this thing was like a panther. Like there was no way I was going to see if it would lick my finger because it felt like it was going to just claw me. Anyway, the last time I was in Japan was last year. And the horses that they were bringing out to me were massively overweight. I'm like, oh man, we've gone from one extreme to the other. That we've gone from them showing me these underweight horses to these really good doers, and not an underweight horse. Like I was not shown an underweight horse, and a lot of that is because we've just maximised their fibre digesting capacity by really focusing on their hindgut health. So it's so incredibly important. For me to watch that process over, 5 or 6 years, it's so satisfying as a nutritionist to go, wow, like it does make such a massive difference. So the more you can get a horse to use its gastrointestinal physiology the way that it was designed, the better off the horse is going to be. Yeah. Because they can extract so much energy out of forage and different fibres when their hindgut's working well.
Yeah, perfect.
And they're so much happier and healthier and calmer. And there's like a million reasons why it's better for them. So yes, rely heavily on your pasture, feed the hay, and then just controlled amounts of a really digestible feed.
Perfect. Well, Camilla, if you're listening, there's your answer.
Very good. You'll have to fill Orla in, Camilla, and we can report back in a later episode. And speaking of later episodes, Orla, I think we should wrap this one up.
Sounds good.
What did we do? We answered 2 questions
and a listener question.
Oh yeah, 3 questions. We've done well. Oh look, thank you so much. It's always fun doing these with you, and I really do appreciate you jumping on here and answering or asking me questions rather, and just makes it fun.
It's always a good start to my morning.
Oh, thanks for that, and we will catch you soon.
You sure will. See you.
If you'd like to know more about the My Happy Horse virtual equine nutritionist, you can head on over to myhappy.horse. And also while you're there, check out the Dr Nerida AI, which is me in AI format. And that version of me is happy to answer your questions about horse nutrition 24/7. Thanks again, and we'll catch you soon.